Welcome to Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. In the next half hour, you'll obtain insights and tools to transform your life using the biblical principles found in the 12-step program. We believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience because we all have struggles in life. Struggles with addictions, food, depression, anxiety, and relationships, to name a few. You'll be encouraged to see how others have found a new way of life with hope for the future through life recovery. Your host is Steve Arterburn, founder of New Life Ministries and Women of Faith, author of over 100 books, and teaching pastor at Northview Church, one of the fastest growing churches in America. Steve is the co-editor of the Life Recovery Bible, the #1 selling recovery Bible. With over 3 million copies sold, this is the Bible given to inmates by Prison Fellowship and the Pew Bible for the Salvation Army. Now here's Steve.
Hi, welcome to Life Recovery Today with Steve Arterburn, and I am Stephen Arterburn, and so glad you're with me here today. Really excited to have you here. I've got a great guest. His name is Scott Watson. I'm really thrilled because Scott's one of those deep, rich, recovering guys, been around for a long time. He's a fascinating guy. I think you're really going to love hearing what he does and hearing his story also. Now, before we get started with Scott, I want to talk to you a little bit about making amends or making restitution. And there's this wonderful, wonderful story. If you look over in Genesis 33, 1 through 11, it's the story of Jacob and Esau. And so Esau runs out and he meets Jacob. And Esau says this to Jacob: "Hey, what were all those flocks and those herds that I met as I came?" And Jacob says, "They're a gift to you." And then Esau says, "I've got enough. You keep them for yourself." And then Jacob says, "No, really, I want you to have them as a gift. Your smile is so meaningful to me." So here we are, two brothers making peace, both really so happy to make an amends and be generous with each other in hospitality and bringing a gift along the way. I would say taking someone a potted plant or a flower when you go visit them is a little bit different than sending flocks and herds of livestock up ahead. Well, it's really a wonderful thing when we care enough about our freedom and we care enough about another human being that we want to make things right. And we're willing to sacrifice to make things right. And that's exactly what Jacob did for Esau. I wonder how many people are harboring a grudge or in fear of retribution because neither took a bold move forward to make peace, to make it right with each other. So I want to encourage you today as we just kind of focus on this 9th step, that you'd be willing, once you make a list of people that you've harmed, that you'd be willing to make those amends to them. And when you do, if you're like me, whenever you do it, it's just one blessing after another. May not be the case, someone may not want to talk to you, whatever, but at least as much as it's up to you, you are doing your part. All right, we're going to take a break. We come back. My good friend Scott Watson, I have known him for years in the recovery world, but guess what? I've never fully heard his story. We'll hear that right after this. You're watching Life Recovery Today with Steve Arterburn. If you need some help, it's 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
Are you going through your struggles alone? Do you want someone to talk to help you through your pain? Do you feel like a failure when you relapse again, telling yourself, next time will be different? Don't walk this path alone anymore. Join a life recovery group today and be a person that your friends and family can be proud of. God created us to be in community, and we believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience. There are life recovery groups all over the country, and if there isn't one in your area, we can help you start one. Life Recovery brings recovery to you, right where you are. You'll take a journey with others to find healing and freedom. Whether you're looking to join a group or start one, New Life Ministries is here for you. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or visit liferecoverytoday.net.
Hi, welcome back to Life Recovery Today. So glad you're with me here. And I'm glad to have a guy with me, Scott Watson. Now, Scott, I think I met you before I was even married. I think I met you at some meeting that my wife took me to before we were ever married. But thanks for joining me today. Scott is a great therapist, as I said. He's so respected in therapy, but also he really is an addiction specialist, and he's also a radio personality in Michigan, and he's just a delight to be around. He's always got a good story for somebody, but I think you're going to enjoy this. So Scott, thanks, welcome, and let's just start, because I don't really know your story, and I would love to know your story. So how did you get involved in therapy, working with addicts, all of that?
So I was in a 12-step program, and I was also on staff of a church. And when you're on staff of a church, you're there about 6 days a week to work and one more day a week to worship. And so I was in church 7 days a week,
Yeah.
and I found that wasn't enough to solve my chemical dependency problem. And so I needed something different, and that's how I landed in a 12-step group. Church kept me on. I was really honest about the situation. The leadership was fantastic. And then what happened was I was running the sports and recreation department, and so doing a lot of outreach. And so we had 4 pastors and a number of other director level staffs, and people would come to them and say, I'm worried about my spouse, I'm worried about my kid, I'm worried about my neighbor, I'm worried about an employee that I've got. And they would say, we'll pray for you. Are you willing to talk to somebody on our staff that has a little more experience? And so they would send them down to the sports ministry office. And what I found was I was spending several hours a week talking with people that were concerned about someone. I didn't have a master's degree in counseling. I did have a bachelor's degree. I had no real experience other than my own story. And I was out kind of at a rural property one time, and someone said to me, have you ever thought about doing this full time? And I thought, no, I'd have to go back and get a master's degree in grad school, and I'm done with school, I'm older.
Yeah.
And of course, as soon as you say no,
right,
you might as well go sign up.
Yeah, well, I'm sure glad you did, because your reputation is fantastic, and you've really helped a lot of people. But I'm just fascinated by a church that kept you on, because it seems like to me that might be, and this was several years ago, might have been the exception rather than the rule.
To my knowledge, in the conversation that I had with senior leadership and with the elders who are above the senior leadership, it was never a question. I think had I not been able to stay chemically free, it probably would have been a question, but I was super grateful. I mean, my wife, I'm divorced now, but my wife at the time set some really, really good boundaries around my behavior, both in recovery and as far as relapse. And those had to do with what would happen to our marriage, my access to our kids, and a number of other things. And I really found that to be helpful. I was someone who was angry all the time.
Yeah.
And in recovery, I almost never get angry. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So recovery from an addiction is one thing. Did you use the 12 steps to recover from the divorce? Was that also helpful with that?
I think you have to look in the inventory process at what's your part in it. And, we're going to talk about step 9 later, but there's a reason why those steps are ordered. And so, being able to do the inventory, being able to look at your part in those, and then asking God, hey, take that improper use of self-will, those character defects, away from me, so that, not that I'm a good guy, but so that I'll be better positioned to help my clients, to be a good dad, to be a good neighbor, and to be more comfortable in my own skin.
Right, yeah. Well, one of the things that you do, you've got Heartland Intervention, and you've worked in treatment, and you've recommended a lot of people go to treatment. Maybe talk a little bit about why is treatment such a big deal? I mean, the original founders, they didn't have a treatment center to go to. Why is that so valuable?
Well, the original 12-step group was Alcoholics Anonymous, and most of the other ones have sprung from that. And so alcohol is one of the substances that we worry about people detoxing at home from.
Yeah.
You can have a seizure, there are medical issues there. But the drugs that we see now are way stronger than the drugs, in the 40s, 50s, 60s,
Sure.
70s, 80s, even 90s and early 2000s. And so So a lot of treatment begins with a medically supervised detox program.
Yeah.
But even for someone that doesn't need that, and there are different types of treatment, right? There's inpatient residential,
Sure.
There's outpatient, there's relapse prevention. But what I tell people all the time is it's not that you can't do it on your own, but sometimes the loving, kind, compassionate thing is to put you in a structured environment, treatment, where you have help, where you have people that are rowing in the same direction and you have access to professionals that will kind of jumpstart your journey into recovery. Can a lot of people do it on their own? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we see people that do, but treatment is a great option for a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, you could survive without a dentist, but why do that when you can get something taken care of? And I think anybody that can get treatment, you will be so grateful that you did because of the multidisciplinary combination of people coming together and trying to help you pull this thing off. Now, when you started, if you're like me, there probably were more people with alcohol problems than drug problems, but now it just seems like with fentanyl and Oxycontin and all sorts of prescription drugs, it's kind of rare to talk to somebody that hasn't found their way to some kind of drug and either gone on to a street drug or they're still addicted and their provider is their physician.
Yeah, I think the concerning thing for a lot of folks, lay people especially, is they look at the substance.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is addiction is addiction.
Right.
The substance is a symptom of that. And so whether it's marijuana, whether it's alcohol, whether it's an opiate, a benzodiazepine, a hallucinogenic, those are just symptoms. And we treat them a little bit differently based on what that symptom is. But the disease of addiction is something that all of those substances can lead to. And not everybody that uses is addicted. But most of the time, by the time they get to my office, by the time they make a telephone call to you or show up on a radio or a TV show, they've got an addiction issue.
Yeah. What do you think about biological predisposition to alcoholism? What's your thoughts about that?
Boy, I tell you, I can look at most families and say that there is some link. And I don't know that I'm smart enough to answer that. I'm not a geneticist. But what I can say is if you are genetically predisposed and then you are put in whatever situation that you are, so there's not only the biology, but the nature, but there's also the nurture, it certainly seems that it may not be causal, but it's absolutely contributory.
Yeah. I think whether you're predisposed to it, once your body's addicted, you don't ever get smart enough to use again, because your body doesn't get smart. That addiction just continues to progress.
One of the phrases that we use is, once you're a pickle, you can never be a cucumber again.
Yeah, really, really good. So in working with folks, and we've got some people watching that, I don't know about recovery. What do you think's the biggest barrier that a person has to overcome before they get into the recovery process?
I guess if I had a message for people, I would say a couple of things. One, recovery is worth fighting through the fear. Recovery is worth fighting through the humiliation or the embarrassment that you think you might be exposed to, and that treatment does work. It may not work the first time. You may have experiences where you're shaking your head when you hear me say that and you think, well, it didn't work for my son, it didn't work for my mom or my dad. The reality is it does work, and the reality is there is help available.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this ninth step a little bit and hear Scott's thoughts about the ninth step, because to me it is such a freeing step. It's one of the most important things, most freeing things I ever did in my entire life. And so we'll talk about that. You're listening and watching Life Recovery Today.
It's hard to find a trusted friend when you're in crisis, someone who's been there and understands, but who also has the training and skill to give you practical help. Family, friends, and churches want to help, but often they're not equipped to care for those dealing with problems like addiction and pornography, infidelity, anger, depression. New Life Ministries is here to provide help and hope in life's hardest places. We're not focused on making people feel better. We're focused on helping people do the work that will help them be better. At New Life, we have resources available to help you, like books, DVDs, CDs, workshops, and our network of licensed counselors. If you need help, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE and begin your new life today.
Welcome back to Life Recovery Today. My special guest, really wonderful man that I respect so much, Scott Watson. And we're going to spend a little bit of time here talking about this 9th step. It transformed my life. So, Scott, when we're talking about making amends, I want to get the second half out of the way and then really get into it. I really do think that a lot of folks use this, well, except for when it might cause more harm, to come clean and to try to make restitution. They just say, well, this person couldn't handle it. That happened to me one time. I found out somebody, they'd really hurt me, and I just didn't think you could survive it, so I didn't tell you, and then, of course, something happened and they had to tell me. So let's talk about that. What is the exception where it might cause further damage?
Well, in most 12-step programs, it says, except when to do so would injure them or others. And I always tell people that I work with, both personally and clinically, that you're not one of those people. You know, if it injures you, that's not an excuse to not make the amendment.
There you go.
It's whether or not it's going to injure somebody else, because none of us want to have our pride injured. None of us want to have our ego deflated. This is one where the biggest mistake people can make, in my opinion, is to think alone. I don't get to decide whether my amend for you might hurt you. Groupthink is a good thing. I need to talk to a 12-step sponsor. I may need to talk to a best friend, an accountability group, a pastor, clergy, because my best thinking got me into the position where I need to make an amend with you anyway.
Yeah.
And so I need some help really deciding and weighing whether or not A, it will injure you, and then B, exactly what is my approach going to be, exactly what are my words going to be, because I want to make sure that I approach you in a way that is helpful to me and helpful to you.
So when somebody makes amends, they might say to somebody, is there anything I could do to make it right? What if that person were to say something like, well, when you insulted me in front of this other man, he was about to give me a $1,000 loan, but then he didn't. So maybe you should loan me $1,000 or give me $1,000. And you just know that's totally irresponsible. Maybe the guy was using that as an excuse. It's just an unreasonable request. How would you respond to that, or how would you tell somebody to respond when you really are trying to make it right, but you're being taken advantage of by the other person?
There's a sense in which we would have to have a discussion, right, about the appropriateness of that, because I do want to make amends, and I want to kind of drill down on whether or not I'm being taken advantage of, or if that's something that I owe you. And I would probably say that's not a decision that has to be made right then.
Yeah.
You know, I can talk to my sponsor and my friends and my pastor and maybe my spouse, because it's her money too, right?
Yeah.
About whether or not that's appropriate. Does it have to be given all at once, or is it really an arm twist under the guise of an amend?
Yeah, and so a good response then would be, you know what, I have a sponsor, and we've been going over all of this. I'll talk to him, and then I'm going to get back to you. And there's no points off about getting back. It's courageous to say, I just don't think I can do that.
Right.
Or I just don't think that that's appropriate.
Right.
But I do think that it's kind of a strange situation sometimes when you want to make amends. I know of a sex addict who truly just felt horrible about what he had done and the hurt that he had caused his wife. And he said to her, I will do anything. I'm going to get the treatment. I'm going to become the man that you want me to become. So he went to every man's battle. I mean, he really turned it around. And then he says to her, after he's worked through up to step 9, he says, what do you want me to do? And she said, well, you're never going to do this again, so why don't you turn all the property over to me and put it in my name? I've never liked your hairy chest. Why don't you shave that? And then you have crooked teeth. I want you to get braces. He did all of those things. And what he says is he was willing to, because he had, this wasn't a drink. This was other women. And he said, I had so hurt her and humiliated her, I was willing to go through humiliation myself. I think somebody might see the positive of that, they might see the negative of that. What do you think about something like that? I mean, I've told that story, and I've watched some men turn red, start to sweat, but I've also heard of a lot of men that actually did that also.
I think the willingness is the key aspect.
There you go.
So it says elsewhere in the primary recovery text that there is one key, and that key is willingness. And so I would be, I think, short to judge that person. If he truly is willing to do anything, then he's willing to do anything. And in the context of his relationship with his partner, I would be slow to judge that. Having said that, if I were his therapist, I would probably drill down on a few of those and talk about motive. Because I think there are two people that have motive there. And not that one is wrong. Don't hear me say that.
Right.
But saying both of them deserve a healthy lens of examination before fundamental changes like that are made.
Yeah. So in dealing with the steps, I think certainly our willingness is there, our humility, honesty. But let's talk a little bit about motivation. What's you could say, what's a pure motivation that you like to see somebody exhibit?
Yeah, there's really two or three things, Steve, that I think are critically important when we get ready to make the amends. The first thing is, oftentimes when we make an amends, someone has wronged us also. And so I need to make sure, and my clients need to make sure when they go to make that amend, that they have forgiven that person. And that's a wholly different process, because my motive is going to be suspect if I go to make amends, or if one of my clients goes to make amends with somebody and the forgiveness question is still out in the open, then what's my real motive for making that amend? The next thing is, and I feel really strongly about this, I think when I make amends with someone, I need to name the character defect.
Yeah. Okay.
So I need to walk into somebody
like
and say,
that.
I was stingy, I was a know-it-all, I was greedy, I was mean, I was uncaring, I was selfish. I think it's important, and I think it kind of cements the rest of someone's 12-step program to be able to walk in and name that character defect, and then to say, you deserved better than that. And I'm going to make sure, for whatever our relationship looks like going forward, that you get better than that from me.
Well, it's so much healthier than what I hear somebody say that causes an adverse reaction. I know how you felt when I hurt you, or, you know, that must have been tough or whatever, and assuming that, you know, versus let's just talk about what I did. Let's just talk about me. And I really like that approach. And I do think, and when we come back from a break, I'm going to talk about reconciliation a little bit, because I think a lot of times people, they don't want to make any kind of amends because they might not want to reconcile, and they think maybe that's part of it. So I'll clarify that. But if you had anything to say to folks as we close out on the 9th step, what would you say would be a really important thing to keep in mind?
Don't do it alone. Talk to your sponsor, talk with clergy, make sure your motive is clear. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid. You've lived the worst life. The amend is not going to be the hardest part of your life. You've already been through a difficult time where you wouldn't have wound up at a 12-step program. So bite the bullet, talk to people, make that amend. You'll be more comfortable in your own skin, and when you walk down the street and you see that person, you're not going to want to turn and look the other way.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott. Really, really appreciate you being here. And I told you, this guy's a real deal. Great wisdom and truth. I'll take a break. I'll come back and I'll give you a word on reconciliation. But you're watching Life Recovery Today, and if you get in touch with me at stevesocial@newlife.com, I can give you contact information for Scott.
Life recovery isn't just about making the courageous choice to give up an addiction or dependency. It's a journey towards health, wholeness, and becoming your very best you. If you need resources to help you in your journey, we can help. There are many life recovery resources that you can do on your own, with a group, or with your church. We have Bibles, workbooks, and devotionals that you can use to work your recovery right where you are. That's the beauty of life recovery. To learn more or to get the Life Recovery Bible or any other life recovery resource, visit liferecoverytoday.net or call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. 1-800-NEW-LIFE.
Welcome back to Life Recovery Today with Steve Arterburn. Thank you for joining me today. And you know, I love getting emails. You can email me at stevesocial@newlife.com. I got an email the other day from a woman who told me about horrific treatment that she had received from her sister. I mean, her sister was really cruel. But this person that had written me had done a couple of things that weren't so great either. And I'd say it was one of those situations where the person I was dealing with, or who emailed me, it was about 30%, and then the sister was about 70%. And my 30% person was working the steps and was trying to get better, and the 70% seemed to be, from what I could tell, was just getting worse and worse. And so she wanted to know, do I have to get back into the relationship here? Am I supposed to reconcile with her and this lead to this happy ending? She said, I don't think it's going to happen. Well, I got to tell you, I do think a lot of folks don't ever make amends, or they don't ever try to make it right, because they're afraid that part of the package is I've got to be in relationship with this person that I really don't enjoy or is really unhealthy, a person that I've worked maybe for years to have the proper boundaries from. And I just want to say this, that when we forgive somebody, we don't excuse it, and forgiving somebody doesn't mean that I have to have a relationship with them. And the same thing with making it right. If I make it right, it doesn't require me to all of a sudden have this new attempt and everything goes right back the same, especially if I haven't seen anything of restoration and healing in that other person. So don't be afraid to make amends because you think you have to jump back into an unhealthy situation. In fact, if a person were to expect that from you, you would be healthy enough, if you're working the program, to say, I gotta tell you, I just can't do this. Feel really bad about what happened before, but I'm just not ready for us to be in relationship again. Well, if you've got a question or a comment, you can email me at stevesocial@newlife.com. In addition, don't forget, if you need some help, you call 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to the website newlife.com. Can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for joining me here on Life Recovery Today. Why is it Life Recovery Today? Because tomorrow never seems to come. Let's recover today.
Thanks for joining us for Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. We hope this program has helped you integrate God's truth and wisdom into your recovery journey. This program is brought to you by New Life Ministries, and it's your support that keeps this program on the air. When you contact us for any reason, be sure to let us know that you watch on NRB. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to liferecoverytoday.net. Please join us again next week for more Life Recovery Today.